Live now. And a huge thank you to our audience who may be following and everyone else at Team ATG for making this work. I'm here with a very special guest and friend, Ben Heppner. How are you?
I'm terrific, thank you. How about yourself?
Yeah, doing pretty good. It's good to be talking to you. And these moments are bringing a bit more variety and joy. So that's kind of good. How are you keeping where you are?
Very well. Well, I have a sort of a suburban house, so I've got a yard. I've actually just opened up the pool to get it circulating, not heated yet, but my grandkids are just waiting, counting down when Papa will finally put the heat into the pool. But I can't afford it yet. I'm in, but marital bliss revolves having two different floors. So, we don't always have to be crammed together. That's been a good thing for us.
Good, good. Well, it's great to have you. It's we're asking people if they have any questions to put them on our chat, but we don't we don't share many things, but we do share some. You were born in BC.
Right?
I was born in Penticton, so we have that in common. And you were part of a Mennonite community, is that right?
Well, my
Or no?
name and heritage is Mennonite, but the actual truth is that I don't ever remember going to a Mennonite church.
So have you ever, probably not, but have you ever seen or heard anything like this pandemic that we are in?
Well, I mean, as it relates to, 1918, I guess, with the Spanish flu, but I don't relate. Um, my father and mother were actually alive during that time, and but I never spoke with them about it. Uh, I guess in terms of opera, maybe the closest I can think of would be Second World War, and they had to shut down most of the opera houses in the world, but it wasn't. And then when they could open and come back, and maybe they had to be renovated because of damage, everybody could come back in. There was no sort of fear. That's the big difference we've got going now.
Hmm. And what do you think are some tidbits that we can hold on to for either some of these young singers or even middle-aged, mid-career singers that are sort of dealing with this? Do you have any wise words of wisdom?
Oh, I know. Just keep on keeping on. Keep yourself in shape. It's probably not so easy now because there's kind of no reason to do it. Um, I just don't know what's going to happen. The audiences will not come rushing back in the moment that the theaters open. There'll be, physical distancing and all that kind of stuff, and I have no idea what's going to happen.
Hmm.
No sort of words of advice. I have gone through sort of a similar kind of a thing, but on a personal level. Back 17, 18 years ago, I had to take some time off, and I think it was almost 6 months. So I had to cancel a number of things that were coming up, and I didn't know why I was struggling. I wasn't able to sing. Turned out to be a medication that I was on that
Hmm.
was messing with the saliva and the sort of the lubrication of the cords, and then that kind of hurt me. So once I switched medications, I actually came back within 5 or 6 weeks. And of course, there was the how do you sustain yourself? And because Karen, my wife, wasn't working at that point, and so we had to figure out um, how to survive. I had to, sell off a couple of assets, and because I didn't know that I was going to make it back, and I think that gave me a sense of a similar sense to what other people are feeling right now. Is I didn't know. I thought I was going to have to retool and, come back as a plumber or something.
Right.
But eventually it worked out, and things turned out. But I had to make some even financial moves to um, make myself a little more flexible.
That led me to, I know we talked about some questions in advance. One of them that I have is, that idea you talked about, being flexible and even possibly being a plumber or something. But for people who are having to rethink, that must be a tricky time to sort of, I guess, when you devote your entire life and being and passion into one area, when you have to rethink what that could be, is the industry sometimes makes you feel, I don't want to say shame, but what's another word where, like, if you're not doing what you're passionate about, then you're not really doing it.
Right. Yeah. You can feel people are disappointed somehow
Yeah.
but this is forced. It's nothing you can do. I always say I had to sing. I had no other marketable skills. Uh, I did things when I was in high school and university. I worked on the railroad. I was this sort of a junior glazier in a glass shop, and I did a number of things. Of course, I was a church musician for a while, and you have to do occasionally. You have to do whatever is necessary to put bread on the table. That's the deal. No shame at all.
I think that's a big thing. It's kind of reaffirmed sort of, well, it has for me anyways, reaffirmed priorities in terms of what you spend your energy and what is paramount or primary in your life. And I'd be the first to admit that I love work. I love spending as much time as I can doing what I can. And when that's sort of taken away from you, it's jarring. It's very, who you think you are is not exactly who that is, and you have to kind of reassess.
Yes, yeah. Well, fortunately for me, things have settled down. The radio work is still going. They sent me a little square box with a microphone and a stand and a couple of wires and a little box to as the interface into my computer, and I'm able to do my shows at home. So that worked out really, really well. And my wife is a minister in a church, and she's busier than she's ever been because she's been, counseling and the people who are struggling through this. She has, I don't know, 45 leaders of different groups. She looks after the small groups in our church, and she's probably got about 45 different leaders. That takes a while and it in fact has almost, I don't know, it's almost enlivened up the whole small group scene. Nobody can say, "Oh, my car broke down," or "the traffic was so bad," or "the weather." So the attendance at all of her group meetings are enormous. They're almost all close to 100%.
Wow.
And this is a way of supporting the people out there. So the two of us have got a whole thing, and we've had to lean in heavily for our grandkids, whose parents have lost jobs and who are struggling along to try to make it. So we've leaned in. So that's kind of my focus, is the CBC work and grandkids.
Great. Yes. Well, I guess that's another whole realm for musicians and singers, is singing in churches. And when that gets taken away, this idea to be together, that's another whole sort of experience and part of both their lives, but also the ministry, which is going through a whole other thing as well.
I'm not allowed to sing at the church she works at. It's completely contemporary. They don't even think about me. But I was going to do sort of a hymn sing thing at a Baptist church, the big one on Yonge Street, York Minster Park, but that had to get canceled because of the distancing that needed to happen. And who can have a hymn sing without people singing?
Well, you touched on it a little bit. You were not just a performer; you were one of not just Canada's best performers, one of the world performers in the operatic stage. And I guess, like you said, you kind of stepped back from a lot of those performances. And what do you miss anything? And if you do, what do you miss most about performing?
The music. For me, it's the music. It's not the applause of the people. I miss the travel a little bit. Not that I didn't like the long time away from home, but I loved that first week where I could be and experience, Paris or, some of these great cities of the world. But the music mainly is what I miss. However, I get it back because I'm sort of immersed in it through the radio.
Oh, amazing. Um, who would you say, and I'm sure there's many, but a best colleague that you've had, and why were they such a good colleague?
Oh, it's like naming your favorite child. Uh, it's almost impossible to do. I gained a number of friends. I'm not one who makes connections with everybody, even though you might think I do. I'm more careful about it, and one of the first persons that I got to know was a bass by the name of Jan Hendrik Rotering, and we met doing Tannhäuser in Chicago. He was the Landgraf, and I was, a little tiny bit. Anyway, we sort of hit it off with each other, and we still keep in touch a little bit. And he was a great colleague. There's a lot of good colleagues. Very few. I mean, I had one guy who, when I started my aria, he was twirling his cane and adjusting his top hat and stuff like that. And unfortunately, though, this was a very well-known director, not an opera director, but a film director, Robert Altman. And he says, "Excuse me, I know that trick. Stop." So he was upstaging me literally behind doing stuff and twirling and this baritone, may I say. But I thought I didn't have too many of those. I had really good colleagues, and very few of them I would ever have any quibbles with.
Yeah. What do you think makes a good colleague? What are some traits that either young singers need to remember, or what trumps all? Is there something about being a good colleague?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's being friendly, it's being supportive, trying to figure out a way to help them and or stay out of their way, give them the stage when it's their moment. You don't have to be their best friend. I do remember somebody who gave me kind of a hard time, soprano, and I never responded and just kept on going. And then it so happened that it turned out I ended up in sort of the opposite position where she was the one who wasn't doing what most of us thought she should. She was just struggling a little bit. It happens. And anyway, after the show opened, she took me aside and said, "Hey, listen, I haven't always treated you well. And I just wanted to say it was so nice that you treated me, and thank you. And I'm sorry." And I thought, you knew that was terrible. You knew you weren't treating me well, and still did. But it's just part of that. It's being a colleague. You don't have to love them to death or anything else, but you need to support, because we're all in the same boat. We're not competing against, at least in Wagner, we're not competing against getting more applause. We're competing against the music.
That's a great point. Well, thank you. And again, one of my favorite opera moments was seeing you perform Peter Grimes, one of my favorite operas at the Royal Opera House. So it's a moment I'll never forget. And I hope that continued health and safety going forward. And I look forward to seeing you in person at some point.
Thanks so much.
Great. Thank you, Ben.
You bet.